Zach Salzar is a great real estate agent. I'm going to catch up. For $5 down, $50 later, you can get this nice, beautiful home with great roofing, hot tub, pool compatible, inside or out, micro pool. Have you seen 3D printers? Water, if you get the pumps going here. Free food. You just put this outside in neighbor's house. I'll probably put bird seed in it. Listen, if you want to talk, let me know. It's been on my mind for many years. When I realized that the game Banjo Tooie was a Metroid game. Some people talk about the genre Metroidvania because, some of the later Castlevania games, basically starting with Simon's Quest, the second one, they started to be a bit more open-ended where you get items and you access other areas. The first Castlevania, really good, was pretty linear. And so, people make this genre called Metroidvania, where if a game has a pretty big overworld and you have certain areas that you can't access yet at the beginning of the game, middle of the game, end of the game, but then you come back with a certain item or ability and you now have access to that area, which could link to another area previously. Yeah, that tends to be in that category. And so the game Banjo Tooie, I just remember many years ago I realized that is a 3D Metroid game 2 years before Metroid Prime came out. And that game is grand. It's huge. I appreciate how much content was packed into that game. I've praised it recently, but it's true. It's a Nintendo 64 game, and it feels like a double game almost. There's so many worlds that they packed in, and for people that don't play Banjo-Kazooie, in a nutshell, it's a 3D platformer similar to Mario, where you control a bear and a bird, and they run around, and you get objectives per level, right? And there's so many worlds and enemies they added in Banjo-Tooie. But that's the thing. It's a sequel to a game that had these characters, with power-ups, right? You learn abilities. Kazooie learns to fly. Early on, Banjo learns to somersault, right? And there's a bunch of other things you learn. As you learn these abilities, you get access to certain objectives. Now, in Banjo-Kazooie, none of the worlds are connected, but there still was, similar elements. I wouldn't call it a Metroid game, but there's elements there. Banjo-Tooie is when it becomes a Metroid game. You not only use your power-ups to go back to previous worlds to get, the jigsaw puzzles, which is the main objective of the game to beat it, but a lot of the worlds are interconnected. To this day, it blows my mind that you can open up like a hole in the prospector's shed, right? He's got this house, and you can open a hole in the back wall, and then you go right into Mayhem Temple, which is a prison to where his friend's being held. And now you can just openly travel between Glitter Gulch Mine and Mayhem Temple as worlds without going to the overworld. That's pretty incredible. And that being said, Glitter Gulch Mine gives you access to the train. And then once you use the train, you can go from Glitter Gulch Mine to Terrydactyland, to Witchyworld. All these different awesome worlds, which are all really diverse. And once again, Grant Kirkhope kills it in the music department. So all this being said, as a kid, it blew my mind that right out of the gate, right when you play Banjo-Tooie, you have all your moves from the last game. That's incredible. I wish more games did that. To the point that, I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. Banjo-Tooie does not drop a single move from Kazooie. In fact, some of the moves, they kind of add a little bit more to it. Like Banjo's somersault, now Kazooie does an overlap over him, kind of covers him, which is really cool. There's so many games where when you go to the next iteration, not only will they drop moves or abilities, but, in a lot of cases, you might start from scratch again. That's not a bad thing. Obviously, in Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, you start off with 3 hearts. Link has his Kokiri sword and his hero shield. He didn't have a hero shield in Ocarina of Time, but, he's got a few things. In Metroid Prime, at first Samus starts with a few things, but then she loses it. Metroid has this trope they named a few years ago called physical amnesia, which is like the in-game explanation for Samus losing her power-ups all the time. I don't mind that. My favorite Metroid game, Prime Hunters, you actually start with like the most power-ups from the get-go, where she starts with Various Suit, missiles, Morph Ball, Boost Ball, Morph Ball bombs. You can do homing missiles, Power Beam charge shot. She actually starts with quite a bit. Now, you don't really... Samus doesn't ever like upgrade her suit in this game, but she gets new weapons. And yeah, Metroid Prime Hunters kind of does that the most, of this trope that I wish more games would do. Because in Banjo Tooie, you not only bring all your old moves, but now there's a huge, like, you easily double up your moveset with all these different abilities that are added in Tooie. And, you know, none of the abilities in Kazooie are, like, mitigated. I brought this up recently in a discussion, you know, in a Metroidvania kind of Discord channel. And I was talking about how it's cool that even something like the invincibility feathers, which is a really strong ability, even in the second game, they had like one jigsaw puzzle where you had to use it. Other than that, it was always just basically having like an invincible Starman, like from Mario, on demand, as long as you had the gold feathers. But that's cool. That could have been an ability that the designers were like, there's only one jigsaw for this. Do we want this? And it's like, yeah, keep it over. And I appreciate that because it's a fun ability. And so Banjo Tooie is just, they just kept adding on top of Kazooie. And I think it'd be cool if more games did that. The reason is because I don't think it isolates your player base when you introduce a sequel game and the players might not have played the original, but they can jump right into Tooie and have fun. That's the cool part. In fact, I think some people are interested in going back into Kazooie and seeing the origins of finding these moves that you get in this next game. I mentioned Metroid and Zelda. I would love for both to do this more. In Metroid's department, Prime Hunters did a bit of that, but it would be cool if... I don't think Prime 4 is doing this, judging by the intro trailer. Prime 4 is looking like a great game. But I would love for a game where Samus just carries over like her light suit from Prime 2. I joke that she has a weapons vault where she keeps things like Plasma Beam, Ice Beam, Wave Beam, all the weapons from Prime Hunters. She might have gave back the Omega Cannon, but yeah, I think it'd be cool. I think she definitely gave back the Omega Cannon. But I think designers could learn from looking at a game that's really good, Metroid Prime's 1, 2, 3 Hunters, and being like, oh, look at all the fun abilities. What if she just carried that over and we add on top of that? Is it a lot of coding? It depends. I think in Tooie's case, I'm praising the game so much, I keep forgetting that they probably were able to easily port over the moves. To some people, they'd be like, oh, isn't that lazy? It's like, no. In fact, the wheel was already invented. They carried over the wheel, and then they added nitro boosters and all these things around the car to the wheel. The wheel was already amazing, right, in Banjo-Kazooie? So then they take a wheel, they basically give you another wheel, and they work in synergy. Because a lot of the new moves in Banjo-Tooie, you know, you're getting new elemental eggs, egg aiming, you can split up Banjo and Kazooie from the backpack, and then they have their own individual moves. There's a lot of like synergy with the base kit. You know, they add 2 new shoes for Kazooie. She had 2 shoes from before. And it's just really cool to see stuff being added on. And I wish Metroid would do it more. I think there's a lot of potential there. And then Zelda, you know, I once a month I play Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, like a co-op randomizer with Udonga64. And we talk about this a lot. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are like the direct sequels to these 2 games, right? You know, it's basically like the Hero of Time quartet with those 4 games. I and a lot of other people would love to see a third Zelda in the N64 aesthetic. You can use the visuals from the 3DS, that's perfectly fine. Make sure you keep the soundscape, I think that's an important thing. But one thing I would love, and we talked about this during our streams multiple times, is Link to maintain what he got from Majora's Mask. I think that would be killer. Now, obviously, if he got Fierce Deity Link, he loses almost all of his masks. So you could have it to where he keeps his transformation masks. Now, the way Fierce Deity Link would work, I feel like story-wise, you probably could have Link seal that up or something, so he keeps the 3 transformation masks, but seals away Fierce Deity Link, or else boss battles, might get pretty polarized. But that being said, there's a lot of potential for Link to just go into a new game and maintain his elemental arrows, his hook shot, lens of truth. There's a lot of fun to be had there because, storage isn't as much of a problem with video games. In fact, it's the opposite. Designers need to learn more to like compress memory. And I think if they made a third 64 like Zelda, you could definitely double up the item count. You could add more songs, but keep a good base kit. Just like how Banjo Tooie kept the base kit from Kazooie. And I think what you can learn about this in game design is, again, if the wheel is perfect, keep the wheel and you can add stuff around the car. You can make a pretty sick car with that. The wheel's already great. Now you can roll around and get some nice revved up engines, get some nitro boosters. It's pretty cool to see that Banjo Tooie was doing this back on the Nintendo 64. I know more people want another Banjo game, and I do too. I think Microsoft is definitely cheating out of their potential with it, and I hope that the next time they make a Banjo game, they add on top of Tooie. I actually think you could carry all those moves and add more to it. It shows another thing about that. What makes it so cool is, yeah, not every ability is required to beat the game at all, but it's nice to have these options. It adds to player expression. It reminds me of while we're playing these Majora's Mask Ocarina of Time randomizers, you can get the hook shot early for Link, and now you can latch onto treasure chests early and have new routes. Now imagine in a new Zelda game, the game designers don't directly tell you to use the hook shot on, that light post made out of wood. They don't directly tell you to make platforms out of ice or out of water with your ice arrows. But by player discovery, you could find different routes to solve a puzzle, which goes back to why games like Deus Ex, Half-Life 1, and Baldur's Gate 3 are so good. Half-Life 2 I'd put in there as well, in the expansions overall, because there's all these different ways for a player to express how to solve a problem. And whether that's just gunning down an enemy or solving a puzzle, I love it when games do that. And I think Rare was really onto something with Banjo Tooie. And I still think that, a lot of the people at Playtonic Games, if they had access to Banjo, I think they would add on top of Tooie in terms of the moveset potential. There's just a lot to be had there, and I think accessibility is good. I think a lot of options are good. It never felt overwhelming, and I think that's the one thing some people might forget in conversations is it might on the outside look overwhelming to see all these different moves Banjo and Kazooie could do. But like a fighting game, you just kind of quickly learn how to do all those moves. ZA is the backflip jump, ZB, is Kazooie thrusting her beak forward to break rocks, and just as an attack. And it's cool that you can, players can have different freeforms in expression and solving problems. I definitely want to play Banjo Tooie on stream in the near future. I've never beat it 100%. I've gotten close on Kazooie. I've beat Banjo Tooie, but I would really like to do a full 100% run. I think the game is not only underrated, but underappreciated for what it did, just in a lot of games in general, again, when it comes to player expression, and carrying over great work, and then adding on top of that. I love Mondays.